Hi everyone, my name is Jasminder Sekho and my personal pronouns are she and her. I am the Human Trafficking Prevention Facilitator at Victim Services of Durham Region. Our work takes place in Durham Region, which is in the Greater Toronto Area in Canada. This webinar is about keeping kids safe online during COVID-19. If you're a caretaker, thank you so much for being here, and I highly encourage you to ask your youth to join you in watching this video. The contents of this presentation may be disturbing to some viewers, as we will be talking about human trafficking, we will be talking about online child exploitation, we will be chatting about consent, sexting, things of that nature, and therefore you may need to take some time to take care of yourself. Feel free to, take a breath or take a break from watching this video, or just to debrief and chat with somebody about this video afterwards. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Victim Services of Durham Region knows that a caretaker's love, attention, and kindness is one of the biggest protective factors against predators and can prevent against exploitation of young people online. So thank you so much for being here today. COVID-19 has caused a shift in the way that we live our day-to-day lives. Half of the planet's children are out of school right now and at home. And as caretakers, we're actually dealing with a lot. This ranges from changes in the way that we're doing our work. Perhaps we're working from home now, or we're working in really high-risk environments where we're actually at the front line of combating COVID-19. And if so, thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing. We might also have different responsibilities, like now we're caretaking for our children on top of our regular responsibilities, or we're caretaking for elderly parents. Some of us may no longer be able to work because of COVID-19. We have messy houses, and COVID-19 does cause a lot of psychological hardship. And as caregivers, we're trying to adjust to a new normal, and this comes with its own challenges. And it may not be at the forefront of your mind that online child exploitation has been on the rise, and that's perfectly okay because you're here today and you're here to learn, which is amazing. So with children being at home, they potentially have more unrestricted time online. This normalizes children being online all day by having to do online schooling. So it's kind of difficult to know whether your children are sort of working online or whether they're playing online. For example, a couple of days ago, myself and one of my colleagues, we were actually chatting about a student that was given a laptop for the first time through the school board. So this young child, she's only in grade 4, 9 years old, and one of the first things that she does when she gets her brand new laptop is she actually goes online and posts an advertisement for selling intimate pictures. This young child is only 9 years old. I think the lesson that we can take from this is there's likely someone behind the scenes that's telling her that this is what people use technology for. And the other thing that we can take from this is that no age is too young to potentially be a victim of online child exploitation. So this is definitely something that we really need to take seriously. So what or who exactly is an online predator? An online predator is someone who sexually exploits a child over the internet. All children are vulnerable to this regardless of gender. This is not just something that impacts young girls that creepy old men are doing to young women. This is something that impacts boys, it impacts girls, and in particular, it also impacts LGBTQ youth. This is because they might be vulnerable due to feelings of not being accepted by perhaps family, their peers, or their community. And the internet may actually make them feel like they have a safe, non-judgmental place to go to and gives them a false sense of security. What a lot of people don't actually realize is that a lot of child exploitation actually happens between youth. So when I go into schools and I'm talking to young children, the majority of the time when they're telling me about somebody exploiting them online or somebody sharing their intimate images or something of that nature, it's actually other young people that are doing this to this young person. That is the majority of what I see in these schools. So by talking to young people over chats, texting, social media, direct personal messages, predators can kind of get to know the child, build trust, and sort of gain access to them by lowering their inhibitions. The internet really builds a false sense of familiarity where young people actually end up feeling comfortable. A lot of conversations, people may think that it might come across or start off as sort of really creepy or weird. It usually starts off in a way that makes the young person feel safe around this person. And what that means is that these conversations start off with a hi, hello, how are you doing? Oh, you look so beautiful in that picture. Or it might start off with some likes or some comments underneath the photo and then trying to lure that young person in. Because a young person might be curious about sex, predators may actually introduce a sexual aspect to the conversations that they're having. This is why it's so incredibly important to have open and honest conversations with our youth about sex, so that way we at least know that the information that they're getting about sex is coming from a safe adult that doesn't have an underlying agenda behind that information. Youth who are more likely to rebel and run away may also really not enjoy being quarantined at home and may be more likely to run away. So if they're being lured online by somebody that's attempting to exploit them, this puts them in an extremely dangerous position. Sextortion is when cyber predators actually use somebody's intimate pictures, images, videos, content to try and get them to send more intimate pictures or videos or content by threatening to release them without their consent. When it comes to luring young people in online and making them feel comfortable prior to exploiting them, we see this so commonly on young people's social media. So sort of as an experiment, I actually asked my younger sister, who's still in high school, to show me some of her Instagram DMs or direct messages that she's been getting from people. And I'm actually going to be including real examples right beside me on the types of messages that she's getting. You might also be able to see that some of them don't really start off as traditionally creepy, but these individuals may have different underlying intentions in their minds. As well as for myself as a young female, I noticed that I also get quite a few direct message requests. And because I'm older and I have the knowledge as to this is what people's underlying intention or desires are behind sending these messages, or that I could potentially be exploited, I know not to respond to those messages. But for some young people that actually aren't aware of this or don't have that knowledge, they may not know that this might actually be somebody that's trying to exploit them. We truly can't expect young people to know if nobody has told them, which is why it's so important that they watch videos like this in order to raise their awareness. The reality in this day and age has become that a predator does not need to be in the same room, the same building, or even the same country to abuse and exploit a child. According to UNICEF, online child exploitation has increased since the onset of COVID-19. There's a lot of grooming, a lot of sexting, and a lot of trafficking that parents, caregivers, guardians, the government, as well as social services need to be aware about in order to understand how we're actually going to combat this. In Alberta alone, there has been a doubling of the numbers of online child exploitation in the month of March. The Internet Child Exploitation Unit actually received 243 reports in March of online child exploitation compared to their last 2 years average of only 110 cases. This is a huge increase, and unfortunately the numbers are actually expected to continue to rise. I'll also be providing you with some resources at the end to help you monitor your child's online usage and their online safety. In terms of COVID-19 and human trafficking, it's actually been found, according to US data, that the demand for commercial sex has remained constant. The majority of sex buyers are not concerned about contracting or potentially spreading COVID-19. What COVID-19 has also done is it has led to an increase in the demand of online materials that are sexual. So for example, it's led to an increased demand of webcam as well as pornography. There are certain platforms such as OnlyFans where people can basically upload content, and for a monthly price, it's available to individuals that are subscribed to that person's sort of profile. People can pay extra money in order to sort of commission some work or for additional pay-per-view materials. This has led to an increase in this specific website and its usage for the dissemination or the creation of pornography. For traffickers, COVID-19 has given them the opportunity to lure, make money off of online content, as well as build trust with individuals that they may want to be trafficking after COVID-19 is over. It's also not stopping traffickers from currently trafficking their victims right now. For more information on human trafficking, what that looks like within a Canadian context, and what domestic sex trafficking is, you can actually book online presentations or in-person presentations through Victim Services of Durham Region. So over the past 2 years, cybertip.ca analysts have identified over 600 cases of online child exploitation through many different forms of social media. This includes Facebook and Facebook Messenger, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, as well as online gaming platforms that may allow youth to have conversations with each other and give the opportunity for people to communicate with youth for a sexual purpose. Now that we're all sort of stuck at home, your child may want to spend an increased amount of time connecting with their friends through live streams or through video chatting. House Party is actually an online video chatting platform where several young people can come together and have a giant group chat with each other. For a lot of kids, this is a great way to connect, as they can no longer connect with each other in their traditional ways, such as meeting up with everybody at school. But if their settings are not set up properly, literally anybody could sort of join the group conversation. So in terms of House Party, if your house is locked, extra people will not be able to enter your house party. However, if your house is unlocked, people can actually just come right in and join that group conversation. You should also talk to your youth about the dangers of somebody perhaps recording them or screenshotting the things that they are saying online through their live streams or through their video chats, and people actually using this against them. I've seen this so commonly, and this includes Snapchat. A lot of young people think that, you know, you can sort of avoid somebody screenshotting you via Snapchat because it sends a notification, but I mean, you can literally Google and find 10 different ways that somebody would be able to screenshot or screen record somebody's Snapchats. So even Snapchat is not a safe way to send content that you don't want shared. So even people that they think that they know or that really care about them might actually end up using this information against them. And as a professional, I see this all the time when I go into schools and I talk to young people. So many social media platforms also allow for young people to share their location. For example, on Snapchat, if you swipe up, there's a thing called Snapchat Maps, and that actually gives somebody's location at any given point in time as to where they are on a given street. This is actually extremely dangerous, and predators may be able to access your youth's location at any given time during the day. So young people can actually adjust their settings to be just their friends that they're adding on Snapchat. They could also personally select the few individuals, such as their best friends, that they're comfortable with seeing their location all the time. Or they could select to have absolutely nobody be able to see their location at any given time. So this is actually something that's incredibly important to keep in mind in terms of location and in terms of Snapchat. Young people may not recognize the dangers of having their location on. Online gaming is another way that your child may want to connect with their friends and sort of pass their time during COVID-19. This actually opens kids up to receiving private messages from certain people depending on the games that they're playing. For example, the game Roblox has actually had some evidence of people trying to prey on young individuals under the age of 12 years old through the game and through its messaging platform. TikTok is also another hugely popular app for young people, and now that they're sort of hanging out at home, they may want to spend more time sort of creating and sharing content. Majority of the stuff on TikTok is absolutely harmless, but maybe your child might be tempted to sort of take risks, do dangerous things, or a little bit more explicit things for the purposes of gaining more followers or more likes. So while most of the things that we sort of see on TikTok are sort of just these silly viral trends or their marketing schemes, some of these things can actually be dangerous. And as I mentioned at the end of this video, I am going to be sharing quite a few resources on ways to keep up with your child's social media online. So what exactly can parents, guardians, or caretakers actually do? So having regular conversations with your kids about online safety is of the utmost importance. This includes apps they're using, what games they're playing, who they're playing these games with, who it's appropriate to have as their followers or as their friend, who it's appropriate to follow, what type of content it's okay and appropriate to create. It's really incredibly important to have those open and honest conversations. It's also important to sort of come together and set the expectation as to what exactly and how exactly will these different apps or platforms be used by your child. And it's really important to work collaboratively on this. It's also important to become familiar with and sort of revisit the controls on perhaps computers, tablets, and phones. I know as parents, you know, we do these things and then we get so busy and new apps pop up here, there, all of these things. So it's always a good idea to sort of take a moment, back up, and retake a look at what the new apps are that, you know, your child may be using and how you might be able to help monitor them and set those expectations on these apps. Like I mentioned, I'll be providing some resources at the end as to how you would be able to help monitor your child's social media as well as the different platforms that they're using. For younger children, it's especially important to ensure that you have access to their email, their passwords, their different usernames, as well as the different platforms all of these things are on. It's really important to have access to that information so that way, you know, you're sort of able to go in and ensure that you're able to monitor them. One of the most important things is ensuring that your children know that if somebody says something to them, texts them, messages them, anything that makes them feel uncomfortable or of a sexual nature, they can always come to you and share this information with you without the fear of losing their online privileges. This is not your fault. Predators prey on young people on purpose. Young children are curious and they are vulnerable, and predators try to take advantage of that. So ensuring that you sort of keep in mind it's not the young person's fault, and to make sure that we sort of give them the benefit of the doubt and they know that they are able to come to you whenever somebody may be messaging them or making them feel uncomfortable. Reminding them that their safety is of the utmost importance to you, and that is the most important thing, can actually be really validating for young people. If you see or read or hear about anything about a young person being exploited online, you can always report it to cybertip.ca. When it comes to sexting, young people that are aware of the risks and the dangers of sexting, research has shown that they're actually less likely to do it. At this time during COVID-19, where young people may not have access to their partners, especially sexually active youth, they may be more likely to sort of share intimate pictures, videos, maybe online video chatting with their partners and sort of share some intimate content of themselves because their partner may not be accessible to them and they may feel like this is a way for them to connect. Partners may also be potentially more likely to pressure a young person into sending intimate pictures or videos during this time, and that is definitely something to keep in mind as well. The biggest thing to know about sexting is that it is illegal to share somebody else's intimate content. That includes pictures, videos, images, conversations, whatever it is, with somebody else without that person's consent. It's illegal to do that. That is considered non-consensual distribution of an intimate image at any age. So it's illegal to do that whether the individual is under the age of 18 or whether that individual is over the age of 18. Under the age of 18, however, it actually becomes child pornography. So if you're taking a picture of somebody or a video of somebody that is under the age of 18 years old, that sort of is of intimate nature, it's actually considered creation of child porn. If you are then sort of having that picture on your phone, whether that's on your phone, on your laptop, even if it's sitting in your sort of direct message requests or in your text messages, that's still considered possession of child pornography. And if that intimate content is distributed, so for example, I send it to a friend or I post it onto Facebook or some other social media platform, or even if I have my phone in my hand and I share it with the two people next to me, that's actually considered distribution of child pornography. And all of this stuff comes with extremely severe consequences. So in order to be a part of the change, a couple of things are extremely important to keep in mind. First of all, now that you know that this is illegal, you can always report to the police. The police can still assist you or your child, even if you don't want to actually formally press charges. The other thing that you can do is encourage your child to go to a safe adult. And lastly, I think this is one of the most important things. Unfortunately, we live in a culture where people's intimate pictures, video content can be used against them in a way that is sort of weaponizing their bodies against them. And in order to be a part of a shift in culture in which we're no longer using people's bodies to weaponize them against that person, I think it's extremely, extremely important for people to be non-judgmental and to be kind of the person whose intimate content has been shared, and to also just make sure that we're not sort of judging or shaming them. When I go into schools and I do my presentations with young people on human trafficking, consent, sexting, pornography, all of these things, one of the biggest issues that young kids come up to me afterwards and talk to me about is about sexting, or is about, sharing their picture or intimate content with somebody that they felt comfortable with, and that stuff later on being used against them. For example, this one time I went into a school, did a presentation, and this young person actually came up to me afterwards and they told me about how the young boys at the school had created a Snapchat group chat in which they were actually sending other people's intimate pictures, videos, content, conversations to each other, and they had literally named the group Pokemon Trading Cards. There were people who were actually dating other people in intimate partner relationships with them, and they were still sharing that content with their peers when it really comes down to a technical level, the young kids at the school were actually running a child pornography ring where they were distributing child pornography to one another and in possession of child pornography. Once again, as I've mentioned, a lot of child exploitation occurs between youth. It's not always just an older person that is taking advantage of a vulnerable young person. So you might be wondering, okay, I'm an adult, I'm a parent, I'm a caregiver, I'm a guardian. How do I actually have this conversation with my young person? Because I know these conversations can get really awkward. One of the big things to remember here is that it's actually not the internet or social media that is the problem in itself. The internet has actually given us extremely beautiful opportunities during the time of COVID-19 to be able to keep up with people that we care about. It's given us the opportunity to learn and get an education from the comfort of our own homes. It's given us the opportunity to work from our own homes for some individuals. So the issue is really not with the internet itself, but it's with how predators are using the internet to prey on vulnerable young people. The biggest thing to remember is that it is not the child's fault. They are young, they are curious, and they are vulnerable. It is not their fault that somebody else is taking advantage of them being in this position. As I mentioned, the solution is always these open and honest conversations. So when talking to our children, there's quite a few things that, we can do and we shouldn't do sort of to have these conversations. And these are all really great things to keep in mind. We're all human. We're all going through our own struggles, especially with COVID-19 right now. But these are some really great tips to keep in mind as a parent or as a caregiver as to how to have conversations with young people and help them sort of open up to you or have these open and honest conversations. So here are some do's. Tell your youth that they can always come to you no matter what. You are here for them. As I mentioned, telling them that you love them, that you care for them no matter what is some of the biggest protective factors against predators that are trying to take advantage of individuals that don't have a strong support system. Another thing to keep in mind is to stay calm. And of course, we're all human. We can totally get worked up. But what I would say is if you feel worked up or you feel really frustrated, which is completely understandable, just take a break from the conversation, step away from it. Tell your child, we'll come back, we'll revisit this conversation in 10, 15 minutes, maybe tomorrow. Whenever is comfortable for you to make sure that you're actually getting knowledge and having an open and honest conversation rather than it turning into sort of an argument or something where both of you are feeling really uncomfortable or really angry or frustrated. Also, make sure that you're aware of your body language and your expressions. Be sure to sort of show openness and non-judgment, especially when the young person is telling you things that they may feel really, really vulnerable telling you about and they don't usually tell you about. Another thing to keep in mind is to label feelings without labeling the youth. So for example, saying something along the lines of, I understand that, you must be feeling really frustrated right now, other than saying you're just a frustrated young child. Those are two different things. One is labeling a feeling, the other one is labeling a youth. So let's make sure that we sort of stay away from labeling the youth themselves. Another thing to sort of keep in mind is to ask questions directly. So asking something such as, has somebody ever touched you in a way that didn't feel okay? That's a great example of sort of asking a question directly. Another thing to keep in mind is that sexual exploitation or sexual abuse may actually create a positive physical reaction. So sometimes it's not always appropriate to ask the question, has somebody hurt you? Another thing to always sort of keep in mind is to reflect empathy and understanding in the conversations that you're having with your child. So saying things like, I know it can be really, really difficult to be a teenager. I know that it can be really difficult to cope with COVID-19 and not being able to be around your friends or not being at school or missing your prom, things like that. Also be sure to sit down with your child and create a list of specific trusted adults that they could go to. Perhaps they may not always feel comfortable coming to you whenever they have a problem. I mean, of course, as parents, as guardians, this is always the thing that we want. However, making sure that young people have somebody that they've identified that they could potentially go to if they're going through something, whether that is a teacher, a principal, perhaps a counselor, a social worker, people of this nature. This is a really, really great way for them to identify a support system for themselves that goes beyond just yourself. Also be aware of vulnerabilities that are specific to your child, as predators may attempt to take advantage of these. And another thing to really keep in mind is that you never, ever have to go through this alone. There are resources available to you, which I will be touching on shortly. So here are a couple of things that we should aim to stay away from while we're having conversations with young people, as they may actually end up alienating the child. So one of the things is that we can't always expect a young person to actually know that they're being lured. Once again, predators really take advantage of young people's vulnerabilities. They sort of take advantage of their curiosity. Oftentimes, they really start off conversations in a sort of way that doesn't really put somebody on the defensive right at the beginning. They try to build that trust. So it's really important to identify with the young person that they may actually not realize that they're being lured, and that's not necessarily their fault. Another thing to make sure that we don't do is judge or shame young people for the things that they've done. So using statements like, "How could you do that?" or "I thought you would know better," or "That is absolutely disgusting," might be a good idea to stay away from comments like that, just because they might end up actually alienating the child and making them feel a little bit uncomfortable. When I talk to young people, one of the biggest things that I actually hear them say to me is, please don't tell my parents. And as a parent or guardian, I know that you're here right now, and what we all want to do is protect the young people in our lives, protect our children. And we know that if our child got into a sort of difficult situation, we would want to help them. But a lot of young people don't actually end up realizing that. So it is quite important to make sure that you actually tell them this directly. I'm here for you, no matter what. The other thing is, don't also expect youth to disclose right away. This also may take time. So it might take a couple of conversations for them to sort of feel comfortable bringing this up. And also don't expect the young person or even yourself, once again, to cope alone. You are one of the biggest protective factors in a young person's life against predators. Be sure to support them. As I mentioned before, I am the Human Trafficking Prevention Facilitator at Victim Services of Durham Region. At Victim Services, we support anybody who identifies as a victim. So this could be a victim of somebody in your family having a death, perhaps somebody in your family committing suicide, intimate partner violence, assault, sexual assault, different forms of gender-based violence, break-ins, all things of that nature. We provide crisis intervention and short-term counseling and case management, as well as connection to sort of longer-term resources, as well as counseling. We also provide consent and human trafficking prevention workshops for young people, and we also provide training for service providers on human trafficking prevention and prevention of different forms of gender-based violence. So if you are interested at all in having Victim Services do a presentation just like this one for your organization, perhaps on different forms of gender-based violence, human trafficking, or training for service providers, you can always get in contact with us, and we are happy to provide that training both online as well as in person. As promised, I have now included a whole bunch of resources for you as parents, guardians, and caretakers out there. So the first resource that I have linked here is a guide on parental controls. I've also included a link to protectkidsonline.ca, and this actually includes a lot of helpful information for parents on online exploitation and what to be aware of online. I've also included cybertip.ca, as well as the phone number for reporting to cybertip.ca. This is actually Canada's national tip line for online child exploitation and being sure to report these incidents. Another resource that I've included here is needhelpnow.ca, and this is actually a really helpful resource on sexting and sharing of people's intimate images without their consent, and how to actually be able to take down these things from online or from different social media platforms. And as promised, here is the contact information for Victim Services of Durham Region. Also be sure to follow us on our social media at VS Durham Region. We provide different content just like today's presentation on our social media, and different supports and resources for people within the community and across Canada. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you joining me. As I mentioned, feel free to share this resource with your children, with the young people in your lives, as well as with the adults in their lives, and helping ensure that we all work together as a community to keep our young people safe. Thank you so much, and I hope that each and every single one of you stay safe.